They served with courage. Now they speak with truth. This is Veteran Voices. Joining us in the studio, Captain Ben Walls. Welcome to the program.
Yeah, thank you.
This is going to be a lot of fun.
No doubt.
I'm telling you, this is going to be fun. I'm excited about it. I know Trent's excited about it. So, first question I got before we dive into everything. If you just say Captain Ben Walls, how do you know in the military the difference between Army, Navy, Air Force? Is there a difference, or you could be a captain in the Navy?
So yeah,
what's the proper way of saying it?
Well, it's still right. So the differentiation. So the Navy captain is the equivalent of a colonel.
Okay.
Full bird.
Gotcha.
In the Army. So basically, there's some crossover, but different ranks in regards to like echelons. So it's
But if I sit it to a military person, Captain Ben Walls, they know exactly.
Yeah, as long as you say Army.
Okay.
Like, okay, cool. Because obviously, if I was in the Navy, I'd be a lot cooler, higher ranked.
Yeah.
Oh, I get it.
And should we, as civilians, refer to you as former Captain Ben Walls? Is it,
No,
or
I mean,
is it Captain Ben Walls the rest of your life?
No, it's just Ben. It's
and just to be up front, I know Ben because I've worked with him in construction for a couple of years. Well, he's doing all the construction. I'm just walking over and
he's
just observing what he's doing.
Problems. That's what you're doing.
And you and I were talking, and I realized this dude is one of the most organized construction guys I've ever been around.
It's hard to find.
And we just started talking, and I realized it's his Army background. And I was like, hey, we do this thing. And one thing led to another. And here he is.
Well, we're tickled to death. And I know you probably hear this, but we do appreciate your service in the military. And I do want to ask a question. Do you get because people say it, thank you for your service, right? But does it become a thing where you're just saying it to say it? Or do you get the impression that when people say it, they're really because I know Trent and I are extremely dedicated to the military. Like we're sincerely thankful because we understand we don't get to do what we do here without you guys sacrificing.
Yeah. It's become kind of a catchphrase, especially go to Lowe's or Home Depot and you use your card to get the discount and thank you for your service. It's just,
Yeah, see, that's what I don't like.
It's something that, obviously, they're being nice. I don't know. It's two parts, at least in my perspective. I didn't serve a full 20 years. So it's kind of like one of those things where I served. I didn't do all I could have done comparatively. But it's still appreciated when people say something like that. Okay. It's not, and it doesn't, it's not as much as you would think. Therefore, it doesn't really bother me because it's once in a blue moon comparatively. So it's not a big deal. It's just, there's a moment I'm like, man, I really didn't do as much as I could have. But yeah, thank you. Thank you.
No, you sound like a typical person who served. You're very humble, and that's very much appreciative.
Yeah.
Well, let's dive in. So where does Ben call originally home, where you were born and raised?
So I grew up in Smithfield, Virginia.
Okay.
So it's still in the 757 area code, but it's a small little town on the peripheral. Mm-hmm. And so I grew up there and actually went to high school in Yorktown. So I drove across the James River Bridge every day.
Wow.
I wasn't a 14-year-old driver, obviously, but I was still still getting a lot of miles in. So it was definitely a good area to grow up in. Obviously, a lot of military down there.
Yeah.
Not too much Army other than Fort Eustis, which was it's funny. My parents have a property where I grew up and where they currently live. It's called Morgarts Beach. It's right on the James River, and you can see across the James River right to where Fort Eustis is.
Okay.
And then also the Idle Fleet is due northwest, so I could see that growing up. And
Eustis. So is that where there was a hotel? Is it Chamberlain? Is that not Eustis? That's probably the wrong one. Probably.
Is Fort Eustis, Langley Air Force Base near there too?
Yep. So Langley Air Force Base.
Okay.
So Fort Eustis is more of a
I got you now.
logistician, like a supply type. They have a couple different units, of course, there, but I never really went on to that installation until I got into the Guard, and they actually have some ranges there, which is pretty funny because it's not a very big installation. So I was like, oh, there's actually M4 range back here. Cool. And you kind of shoot off towards the river, kind of.
What high school did you go to?
So it was a Christian school called Summit Christian Academy in Yorktown. So it was a cool experience, but ultimately growing up there was great, and that was kind of the military interest. Most of it is really derivative of my family background.
Gotcha.
Grandfather, dad, and my brother. And my brother is 12 years older than me, and so he actually did full 20. He did 20, I think,
Wow.
3 or 4. I always say it wrong, and he's like, "Hey, you shaved a couple years off, buddy." So obviously I want to be like my big brother, and so that's one of the main interests. And that was my goal from probably when I was 8 years old. Just wanted to be in the Army.
Yeah.
And so my dad was like, "Hey, you really should consider going to college." And I was like, "Yeah, that makes sense." And then ultimately he was like, "Hey, why don't you think about ROTC?" And I was like, "Wow, that kind of nests perfectly with everything I would like to do." So wound up going to Liberty.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so
So was that influence at the Christian school, Liberty?
yeah, I mean,
Is that how you find out about Liberty Universities through
Yeah.
the Christian school?
basically, I mean,
You don't have a lot of options.
no, it was funny because my dad was like, "Hey, you can go to these different colleges, but I'm only going to pay for Liberty." So I was like, "Oh, okay." Well, then I go to Liberty and I get a 4-year scholarship through the ROTC program. So he won.
Yeah.
I didn't realize Liberty had an ROTC program.
Oh yeah.
Wow. Well,
It's-
that's
it's-
cool because I didn't know that either.
Well, so what's interesting is that it's actually I think it's congressional in regards to having your primary ROTC program. So UVA is the primary, and they'll have these satellite schools. At least when I was going, it might be different now, but ultimately we were underneath UVA.
Wow.
But interesting enough, we had more cadets than UVA. And so we're like, yeah, we're just rocking it out. We had a whole bunch of guys and gals, of course. And so 4 years there and commissioned out of there. So it was a great experience. The great institution. One of the cadre members, teachers, was Major Donahue. I don't know if that name's rattled. He actually passed away overseas in an IED attack. And so I had him as a teacher. He was a great influence. Solid guy. And so kind of getting into the ROTC program and having these great mentors really set me up for continuing my interest in pursuing that path.
So when you're in that program, when you graduate, you know your path, sort of, or
To a degree.
Okay.
It's interesting. So it's very competitive. Well, I guess different administrations make that the case or not. So when I was coming up, there was a big interest in having, because they're talking about the surge. This is during Afghanistan, but they were basically saying, "Hey, we're going to need a lot more officers. We're getting ready to go into a big push." And
It's just 2008-ish.
yeah, I should have said that. Yeah. Okay.
yeah, so ultimately, interesting enough, you can have a bunch of cadets in these programs, and not all of them get appointed to
Okay.
be an actual officer, or not all of them will get an active slot. They'll actually go, "Hey, thank you for doing this. You have been selected to be an officer, but you're going to go to the reserves, or you're going to go to the National Guard."
Oh,
So it's kind of this very competitive dynamic. You obviously, hey, I'm really wanting to be in the active Army. So they have this order of merit list. So you're based on grades, based on the actual military program. They'll have different leadership quality type things they're looking
Sure.
for. And so they'll evaluate you, and then they'll put you on this order. And so they actually had, fortunately enough slots for me to go the active route. And so once you get your orders, you kind of get nested. You say, "Hey, cool, you got selected to be an armor officer." So in that OML, the order of merit list, you pick, "Hey, these are my top 3. I really want to do
okay. Yeah.
X, Y, and Z." So all
What did you want to do?
Well, it's funny because I wasn't the smartest guy, of course. I'm still not the smartest guy, but ultimately, I picked high, and I didn't get picked the one I wanted. So I was like, "Hey, I want to be cool. I want to go aviation, which is very, very competitive. Infantry, which is actually very competitive,
Really?
and then engineer, which was like kind of a throw out. I was like, oh yeah, let's try this. So then they're like, hey, cool, Cadet Walls, you got air defense artillery, which is like the inverse. No one wants the air defense. Well, sorry for whoever's listening to air defense. But it was one of those things where like, oh, that's a letdown. But by the way, if you look further down this order, you're going to branch detail armor. So basically what the big army says is, hey, we have kind of a pyramid. We have different task orgs that don't need a lot of second lieutenants early on. They want them to be more mature. So first lieutenant, captain type thing. Usually that's for like military intelligence or I guess technically I might butcher this, of course, but there's another branch that is kind of top heavy that they want higher ranks. And so they'll branch detail them out, let them go get their lower years or, second lieutenant, first lieutenant years, and then they'll let them come back to the fold, quote unquote. So at the time, ADA was like, hey, we don't need any second lieutenants. Armor was like, yeah, we do. So I got armor, which was a godsend, honestly. A great branch to be a part of.
Is armor tanks? I mean, is that the group you're with?
Yeah, so there's two parts to the armor, and it falls. So it's armor traditional being tanks, so be Abrams and Bradleys, and then they actually have cavalry, and so that's just light. Basically, you're in Humvees or MRAPs or ATVs, and so a traditional scout reconnaissance type mission.
You just made me think of something. So, I mean, we see constantly the glory stuff of aircraft that changes, right? Does tanks change? I mean, are we still...
So,
because you mentioned those names, and those names seem old.
Oh, yeah. So the Abrams, and I'm going to butcher this because, like I said, I was a cavalry officer, so I kind of, after my training for the Armor Basic course, I never touched a tank again, but they basically, the Army has invested into these main battle tanks, and they've been doing these... versions. Basically, they're upfitting them with new technology, incorporating different aspects of it. So they're on like version 3 now.
Okay.
So the same platform that's been in existence since I think the 90s, which I could be butchering that, of course, but ultimately that investment, that core investment, they're trying to just keep working off of that.
It's like an iPhone.
Yeah.
just keep new version.
Oh yeah.
Gotcha.
It's really cool.
All right.
So you end up in cavalry?
End up in cavalry.
So is that like a lighter duty fleet, right?
Yeah, so it's funny because you get to wear Stetsons, so you get to wear a cowboy hat, which is pretty funny, and spurs.
Because cavalry is the horses, right?
So
From the back in the day.
we're carrying that tradition
Yeah.
within the modern force, and so when you have formations and different kind of big moments, you'll wear your Stetson, and you earn your spurs. Basically, they have like the little internal unit challenge that says, "Hey, you're a spur holder now," and so. It's pretty funny. There's a lot of heraldry behind it, a lot of tradition behind it, and of course they're just carrying that through. And so it's funny because it's always a competition, which is what you want in regards to the military. So, like in the tiering, it's like infantry is the badasses, right? And then cavalry is like, oh man, they're just trying to be like infantry guys. But it's a different mindset, honestly, because basically their focus in the cavalry realm is really is a reconnaissance piece, and so basically they don't have a lot of the big guns that the infantry companies would have because they're going to be light and nimble, and they're basically their goal and their training is designed to be able to go out into a sector, get all the information they can to bring it back to the leaders to then shape the battlefield.
But not on horseback.
Not on horseback.
Okay, I'm just trying to follow this.
Yeah.
Okay, but I see what you're saying now. So that's okay. God, that's got to be a fun part though.
Oh, it's very fun.
So where are you stationed when this kind of stuff happens? From
Yes.
Liberty, where do you go to?
So Liberty
Oh yeah.
graduated. Kind of an interesting dynamic is some officers, after they commissioned, they actually don't get paid until they report to their first whatever duty it is. So I had a couple of friends who didn't have a job for 6 months. They got commissioned, but they technically don't get paid until they show up to their next duty station.
Yeah.
And so I was fortunate enough. They're like, hey, Lieutenant Walls, you're going to go to Fort Lewis, Washington, and be a cadre member for this evaluation process. Basically, it's called Leadership Development Accession course. And it's like the last thing you do between your junior and senior year as a cadet your final evaluation. So there's a lot of stress involved. So they're like, hey, and as much as you have, 1 year of college difference, I want you to go and evaluate the guys that you're going to be, seeing down range eventually. So I did that for a couple months, and then from Fort Lewis to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, and that was for a basic officer leadership course, which they phased out. But basically, their goal with that was that, hey, we're going to take all these branches, the MI, the military intelligence guys, the financial guys, all the soft MOSs, and we're going to put them in like a infantry style training, so that they have that baseline just in case they have to get into a situation. They at least know that. So to do that, Fort Sill was really hot when I was there. It was just a great place regardless, but that was, I think, 3 or 4 months. And then to Fort Knox, Kentucky, and that was the armor basic course. That's basically saying, hey, this is your branch. So I got to drive, get licensed, get to do gunnery on Abrams, which is crazy. You're 21, 22, and second lieutenant, you're driving the tank around. I'm like, well, this is kind of weird. But then did the same thing with Bradley's. And then they had a second set where like, all right, now you're cavalry. So then they'll send you out and you just walk around. So from that to Fort Knox, stayed there for another couple months doing a thing called Army Reconnaissance Course, which is like a souped up version of AOBC, but more kind of getting the big picture of like, hey, this is what's your goals when you become a cavalry officer, and really getting nested down to the reconnaissance piece. And then finally got to my unit, which was at Fort Campbell, Kentucky. And it was not funny. It was kind of surreal. While I was at Fort Knox, my unit was actually down at Fort Polk doing their upcycle training for deployment. So I knew kind of early on that, hey, I'm going to probably hit this window. As soon as I get to Fort Campbell, I'm going to probably deploy. So I got to Fort Campbell, and 30 days later, I get deployed to Afghanistan.
Wow.
And it was so funny because it's like, man, I don't know nothing.
Yeah.
And even more surreal. So I'm an air defense artillery officer.
Dude, what are you, 22?
Yeah.
23 years old? Yeah. Air
Defense artillery officer, branch detailed armor, gets sent to an infantry company. And like, what is this thing? I don't know what I'm doing. And I was the extra lieutenant, basically waiting for a platoon leader spot to open up. So I was this minion, which is good because I got to watch before I became actually a leader of men. And so, but this 30 days, so I missed all the technical like certification processes that they all did. So like, they're going to inject me into this, and I have no background of what they did for the past 6 months to get ready for deployment. I'm just going to get shown up and hopefully not get shot. So,
I mean, is that a call? Hey, come to my office. How is that? How is the deployment? Because your dad said when he was on a couple of weeks ago that it was Westpac or something, right?
Yeah, didn't know what Westpac was. And he said, "You're going to Vietnam."
So, I mean, what's that? How does that look?
Well, I mean, for me, as soon as I got my orders, even at Liberty, I had a good idea of, because like I said, they were. So there's during Iraq and Afghanistan, you had key divisions that were constantly deploying. And so 10th Mountain, 82nd.
So you kind of knew.
Yeah. So basically, you can look down and see. Okay, so 3rd Brigade just got back. It looks like 2nd Brigade's up.
Oh, okay.
Is up on the queue. So you would always have this cycle, and then that was before I actually got nested with like talking to the right people. That was just me just doing some analysis based on just looking online. But then as soon as I got my orders, I was able to call. You have liaisons basically.
Who's giving you those orders?
So the packet comes down from a bunch of civilians, which is pretty cool. I mean, they have military guys with them, but ultimately up at Fort Knox, they just changed it. Fort Knox has become more of the central focus of the branch, and I'm gonna butcher this, like detail office. Basically, they're the ones that put you where you want to, or where you want to go, or they want you to go, kind of thing. Okay. So if I stuck in longer, I would be reaching out to this guy and saying, "Hey, what are the openings? Oh, you can go to Darmstadt, Germany. Go to Stuttgart. You can do all these different things, and you're trying to figure out." But these guys will assign, and they're just looking at the numbers. Like, okay, we got all these guys coming up from all these different schools. Let's put him here, put him there. And so it comes down And it all lands into your email basically once you get that going. And then you're like, surprise. So then once I got my orders, I kind of knew that there was going to be a high probability. There was a little bit of a nuance to it because sometimes you would have officers and new guys show up to the units, and depending on the leaders, they might just say, hey, we're going to keep you back on, they call it rear D, for a couple of months. So that way you can train up a little bit. Mm-hmm. But then, like my commander, he's like, yeah, we're going to take you with us. So
Now, what's Afghanistan? What's the picture in 2008, is it 2008, 2009?
2009. Well, 2010 was when we deployed, but 2009, yeah.
Yeah, so in 2010, and you're in Afghanistan, what's Afghanistan look like? I mean, what's going on in,
but before
in their world?
that, what you because I've often wondered this. The farthest you've been is Oklahoma or Washington. You've not gone overseas, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. What's Afghanistan look like?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you're right. What does it look like? But I mean, what does it really look like? I mean, you have no clue what you're getting into.
It was pretty interesting. Like I said, that 30-day training, or really it was more like we were just loading up all our Connaxes and getting ready to deploy. And it was me just picking people's brains because you have all these information streams, so the S2, so you have like different acronyms, of course, but the intel officer for the battalion or squadron is getting all this information fed up from the brigade, from the division. And so they're slowly letting you know, like, hey, this is the picture of where we're going. And this is what, so which is interesting is we got assigned to RC South, which is Kandahar. So Kandahar Airfield is one of the bigger, obviously, names. But they're like, hey, I remember we had a company formation, and the company commander's like, hey, we're going to, I think the phrase he used was the heart of darkness. He's like, yeah, there hasn't been a NATO force presence in the area of operation, the AO, that we're going to in the past 2 years. So you can imagine it's going to be pretty interesting, right? And so he painted this picture of like, we're all going to die. So we're like, okay, cool. Well, at least as a second lieutenant, Wall is like, oh my gosh, we're going to the heart of darkness. Okay.
Wow.
So then we were getting all this map and imagery and kind of getting an idea of where we were going to land. And once we got pushed out into the sector, and really cool. I mean, it was very flat, obviously very arid, but the primary legal product grown there was grapes in that region. And what they did was they would actually, the wealthier you were as that farmer, that landowner, the taller, they would actually make walls out of mud. So it'd be vertical, straight on one side, and then it would have a slant so the vines could grow up on the other side. And so the richer you were, the taller your walls were, basically. So you had more production. So, I mean, the primary growth products, of course, were poppy, marijuana, and then grapes.
Huh.
What am I doing?
And so you would go out into the sector and you'd be in these marijuana fields that are 10 foot tall.
Good Lord.
No kidding.
Yeah, it was nuts. I was like, what is, you come back and you're just covered in dust, covered in. And then, of course, you see the Afghan guys just grabbing some pieces and taking it with them, pocketing it, and getting ready to light up that night. But it was very interesting because basically you could see from our AO all the way down to the desert, which is south of Arghandab River Valley. So you had this really interesting, clear line of sight.
Are you interacting with the people of Afghanistan too?
Oh, yeah.
You were mentioning they were like grabbing things with
are you on
for their pockets.
Are you on a base at that point?
Yeah, so we got to Kandahar Airfield. So actually, what's funny is we flew commercial. So we went from Fort Campbell to Bangor, Maine to, I can't remember where.
Kind of typical flight, right?
Yeah, I think it was like the Czech, and then Czech to Kazakhstan. And there was a Air Force installation called Manus. I think Manus was the name. It was interesting because I was the first, like, we're landing in a military installation, which is run by the Air Force, and they had like bars. And so, of course, everyone who was stationed there could participate, but those guys who were just cycling through was not allowed. It's like, okay, cool, that's fair. So we were just there for a couple of days, and then we finally, flew into Afghanistan on a military plane. And so we flew in to Kandahar, we did a training cycle. I think it was 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and basically you're getting your theater property. You're getting all the which is surreal at the time, and all the stuff that we left behind, of course. So all this equipment that we didn't have home. So MATVs, MRAPs, all these really high-speed pieces of equipment.
What is that? I don't know.
So basically, the army, so we were being smart and creating products, vehicles, platforms that were designed to interdict, at least as best we could, for IEDs. And so they had these new vehicle systems, and of course, MATV stands for something I can't remember what. Yeah, MRAP, the same thing. But basically, these two different vehicle platforms that were Super Duty. They're basically like Humvees on steroids. To the point where some of the MATVs had a Crow system, which basically you would have either 50 caliber Mark 19 mounted on top, and you would have your gunner actually in the vehicle with the screen and a joystick controlling it, versus him being into the gunner seat.
This is the way we need to hunt.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Sure.
so that's infrared.
Yeah.
It's a really cool platform.
So you don't have the guy up on the turret up above anymore.
Right.
For certain
He's
ones.
inside the vehicle.
Yeah, there was like a ratio. Basically, you'd
Yeah.
have like 2 or 3 per convoy that would have the Crow system.
But you got the cool one, right?
Yeah,
Like-
well, it was fun. I have a funny story about that. Was when we finally got to Kandahar and deployed, we got assigned to what they called at the time FOB Wilson, so Forward Operating Base Wilson. And then, of course, the wokeism came into play mid-deployment, and they had to change it to a local name, FOB Pasab. They got to be nice.
So you're experiencing woke stuff even back then, right?
Well,
or friendly stuff, I guess.
Yeah. So, I mean, that was one of the things that we can always talk into later, but basically the military is a spearhead in multiple ways.
Yeah.
And one of those ways is unfortunately that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Oh my.
You're seeing those things early.
Yeah.
So the DEI, so anyways, so
we have bases in Afghanistan at this time. So we've built the okay.
yeah, so basically, Helmsdale province, which is the next province to the west, was controlled by the Marines.
Yeah.
Oh,
And so we would hear contacts and stuff, and our battalion wasn't on the border between Helms, but we were the next one over, so we would hear about it, and we would hear our sister battalion go and do some support missions with the Marines. So what they do is they kind of divvy up the land. It's like, hey, you're going to own this land, you're going to own this land. The Marines are over here owning this land. Army, you're going to be here.
gotcha.
And then they'll divvy it up between that organization. So then we got from FOB Wilson. That's when we started having the fun stuff. We were pushing out into sector and claiming the land, basically saying, hey, there hasn't been a NATO force. We're going to start doing presence patrols. We're going to start pushing out into sector and then start establishing combat outposts, basically just smaller versions of those FOBs. The FOBs are huge. Basically, you can put an entire brigade within that installation and have plenty of room still.
So do you have people under you at this point?
So I didn't really get assigned a platoon until roughly 5 months into deployment.
Okay.
So the platoon that I took over, and they try to do this rotation internal. That platoon leader moved into the executive officer position. Basically, you have your company commander, who's the top, first sergeant, who's really the top, but he's in the enlisted sector, and then obviously the XO is the next guy under the company commander, who does most of the logistics and support work, all the stuff the commander doesn't want to do, basically. So I took over that platoon because he was a senior platoon leader, and he got promoted to the executive officer spot. So I took over 3rd platoon. And so that's when we took over, literally it was a compound we took over, a pre-existing structure, made it into a patrol base, basically just kind of made it defendable, little creature comforts, a nice little, hole for, all the number 2s and all that. It's basically just try to make it habitable, knowing that eventually we're going to go a little bit further south and build this nice combat outpost, which is a segue to the engineering thing, which is funny. I succinctly remember having to be, I was still a second lieutenant, in charge of supervising Seabees. So the Navy sent out these Seabees who are their engineer asset. They obviously vertical and horizontal components to that, but they had all this heavy equipment, and they have had carpenters on their team. So they actually built this nice framed TOC, which is basically a tactical center. And but we're pulling security for them, and so we'd had a couple of kinetic interactions. Basically some rounds fired, and it was funny because ultimately the Seabees were like, "Hey, you're here for us," and I'm like, "That's fair enough," because they had like M16s, like these long rifles. And one of the funnier stories is while we were building this COP, one of the heavy machine operators climbed out of his bulldozer, and he's like, "Oh, where's my rifle?" And we're like, "Oh my gosh, what?" So he looked over, and he actually ran over his M16 and just demolished it. And so, like in the Army, that would have been like, "You're in trouble. You're going to lose rank." It's a big deal. But then when their chief found out, he's like, "Oh, it's okay. We'll get you another one." I was like, "All right, these guys are cool." So
now, is there any threat where you are? I mean, is there any Afghani threat? I mean, is there anything going on?
Yeah, so it was cool. One of the cooler contact moments, what we'll do is we'd post up while we're building this combat outpost, and they're using these HESCO barriers, which are basically these like metal kind of they would erect, and you would fill up with dirt, and it would make these really ingenious, easy installation and construction, basically wall, and then they'll stack, too high, and then they'll put these at the corners, basically these towers, so you can have overwatch and security. But while they're building it, obviously we're there, and we have our MATVs, MRAPs as our gun platforms, pulling security on all the apexes. And so one day I'm sitting there and trying to keep myself busy. I set my vehicle up on the road adjacent, and I was actually doing I was stopping people. I was searching them. I was like, while I'm here, I'm just going to talk to people, and I'm going to look through their bags, just being a dumb second lieutenant. And obviously I had guys with me, so I wasn't just by myself, but I'm sitting there waiting for the next, motorcycle to pull up or whatever. And I started getting some rounds fired into our construction site, basically. And it was southeast of where I was. So I started running just to get to my guy's vehicle that was closest to that point of contact. And so the funny moment was, as I was running, there was a bulldozer driving. And so I just got behind the bulldozer, and I said, "Hey, keep going, keep going, keep going." So I just walked behind this bulldozer to get to my guys, just trying to get more information. Like, hey, how far is it? Where there's a contact? And all they're doing is just taking some pop rounds. It wasn't anything crazy where they're doing some kind of assault, but they were just trying to say, "Hey, we're here. We don't like what you're doing."
Yeah.
He starts the story with the funny part is. So you and I talk about live rounds. Yeah. The funny part is.
Yeah.
But there was like a school. So, Afghanistan's a hot mess. Everyone knows that. And so there was, I'm not sure who built it, but there was these key installations, and one of them that was nearby our combat outpost was this school that was built. And it was some mission that was established. And of course it failed. They came in and took it over and basically kicked everyone out and said, "Hey, this is not what we want you guys to do. We want you to learn anything." Right? But then they used that as kind of like their staging point. They would go out from that school and do like little, assault or contact missions that they would. So we knew it was from that area, and that was exactly where those rounds were coming from. But very interesting. Segueing back to it, so I'm a second lieutenant. We're building this combat outpost, and these Seabees they're asking me questions like, "Hey, where do you want us to finish this wall at?" Like all this stuff. I'm like, I don't have any rank. I'm not. And so I knew it was one of those moments where it's like, oh my gosh, this is going to impact for the next 5-10 years my decision on following forces.
Yeah.
And so I was like, all right, well, in the absence of guidance, I'm going to make my best guess and go
exactly.
with it. Yeah. So it was funny. It's just like a humbling moment. Like they're asking me these questions, and I'm a second lieutenant, and some colonel's going to find out and get mad.
And it's also it's a big, when you're that young, and like Brian had asked you about when you take over, and you've got people that are veterans that have been in the military around you too, and you're the second lieutenant, so you take
Yeah, grief. Yeah.
from take grief from all the old salts and veterans and people that have been there, and you don't know anything that you're doing, and you got to make decisions, and you're the one that's responsible for them. So it's a lot of responsibility and pressure on a young person.
And oftentimes I've always wondered, because I mean, I do it. I build out in my head what actually is going on over there. So you get dropped into it, and then is it totally different than what you've thought in your head, or you're like, no, this is pretty accurate?
So obviously,
Because you've trained, but you've not trained for what you're actually doing, right?
yeah, I mean, it was such a convoluted conflict, you know. So, in as much as nothing compared to World War II, and that, you know,
Yeah.
true sense, you know, once we established these fortifications, these combat outposts, these patrol, we were basically secure. We knew we can go to sleep at night, and not unless, you know, at least in RC South, there's obviously other regions in the country that, based on elevation dynamics and a lot of, whether it be mortar or rocket attacks, or, you know, they're shooting up from this mountaintop down into the valley, that kind of stuff out in RC East. But where we were, we just had such a presence that we didn't have that concern of being overwhelmed. And so it's like the differentiation between those prior conflicts and, you know, being in a situation where, you know, you can get killed any moment kind of thing for us is like, all right, well, we're in our house. No one's going to mess with us. But the compounding thing was that who you were fighting wasn't black and white. It wasn't a clear thing. So, for example, one of the things that would kind of be consistent is that you would have these random, you know, as we're doing like a presence patrol as an example. Basically, we're just going out into a sector, showing force, trying to get some information, having key leader engagements, talking to the elders of the villages, trying to build some rapport, just getting some information, honestly. You would have these rounds just randomly pop off. You're like, okay, you know. And so then you try to like figure out where it came from. Usually just one guy, right? And so talking to the interpreters, so one of the big things during our time was Karzai was in power, and so you had these rules, Karzai 12, and one of them was we couldn't do a patrol without a counterpart. So whether it be an Afghan National Army or an Afghan National Police Force within so we would, in order for us to move,
You had to have somebody with
you had to have an Afghani partner with you.
a chaperone.
Yeah, so then you build these relationships, but ultimately you'd ask him questions like, yeah, man, that's this guy who just shot at us. He's getting paid like $5 to pick up this random AK-47 that was dropped off. You know, $5 is like 2 months for them. And so we're shooting and potentially killing these guys that are just trying to survive.
Yeah.
You're not really fighting the guy who's calling the shots, who's causing these insurgency type things. So as a, you know, then, so it was just hard to figure out what the best course of action was based on those constraints. Like, man,
What was the reception you get from the civilian people that you're walking by and having an interpreter talk to you? Are they looking at you like, what the hell are you doing here? Or
Yeah, by 2009, yeah, they're probably starting to get fed up with us being there, right?
well, here's a good snapshot. So when we were down establishing our patrol base and then our COP, there was this random mound, this hill. And it was definitely unique. You know, there was nothing other than this mountain range in the far distance that was controlled by the Canadians. There was no real elevation changes in at least a good 10 miles. It was all flat. And then you would have these random mounts. And they were like, I don't know how tall, but it was significant where you could see. And you'd be like, what is that? And usually it would have a compound on it. You know, somebody just built their house on top of it. And then you talk to the locals and like, yeah, those were built by Alexander the Great.
no kidding.
So he had these installations built. So these people have been,
Their history is not our history.
Well, yeah,
I mean, we're
correct.
1776
Right.
is our history. You know what I mean? That's amazing.
but you just think about that. Their culture is engrossed with conflict.
Yeah.
So we're just the revolving door,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly.
So
You're
the Russians
we're
were
the next
here.
ones.
Okay, cool. That was
Yeah.
another key interesting dynamic. You'd have all these blonde hair, blue-eyed, red hair,
No way.
blue-eyed Afghanis.
No way.
Yeah.
I never knew that because the Russians had been there.
Yeah, so you'd have these like random dude in Afghan National Army fatigues, and you're like, you do not look the part.
Right.
And then you're talking, to the interpreters, like, oh yeah, his great grandma got messed up.
It makes a lot of sense, though.
So it's just surreal. Like we're just that was the,
Rashgani.
yeah, it was crazy. So it was one of those things where like we knew that we were just a revolving door. Like they've seen everything.
So how long is this is your deployment? So how long were you there?
So we did 11 months. We didn't do a full 12. I forgot what the justification was, but basically the unit that relieved us came early, kind of thing.
Are you relieved to come home?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I enjoyed coming home. It was interesting, especially the guys. Like my platoon sergeant, he was a young, crusty old dude. Like it was surreal. That was his 5th deployment, and I mean, he was only 30, maybe, maybe not even that. It was one of those things where it's like, dude, you've been through it. So for him, obviously, he was just done. He was tired of doing that. He finally he came home and got married, and he started finding the right jobs that would make sure he wouldn't deploy as much. But ultimately, for me, even why I'm bringing this all up is you develop this this core of soldiers, and you learn to love them, but basically they serve you. They watch your back. You watch theirs. You went through hell and back to a degree with them, and you kind of reminisce. You miss that time. Mm-hmm. It sucked in the moment, but obviously it made you the better person in the end. And then it got to the point, unfortunately, where you would see those who were better off being deployed.
Yeah.
So I would have really good soldiers that I deployed with when I came home became really bad soldiers.
Yeah.
Because they just could not cope.
Yeah.
They wanted to be in conflict. They wanted to do the things. It's the big Army situation is basically overseas you're a big boy. You had your left and right limits, but you were able to make good decisions, and even at the lowest level, you trusted, but you still had your rules of engagement, all that kind of stuff you would follow. But when you came home, you became you're a baby. You're like, okay, make sure you have your rifle up and down range when you're actually doing your qualifications. Like, yeah, no, duh. Like,
yeah.
And then it became like this overarching, like you just didn't feel like you were respected.
Huh. So where do you come back to when you come back from deployment? Where do you land back into? Are you back at
Fort Campbell?
Fort Campbell.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Did you just serve out the rest of your years there?
Yeah. So the 4 years active I stayed at Fort Campbell.
Was the decision after your 4 years, was it difficult to walk away?
So it was interesting because when I got back from deployment and kind of got settled probably 6 months later, my wife and I were talking. We're like, yeah, I think we can do this 20-year thing. Because she was not initially. She was.
All right.
Is she your wife while you're in Afghanistan?
Stop
You just
for
mentioned
1
your
second.
wife for the first time.
The wife is just coming.
You
to
just
the
got settled in 6
So
months.
when did this happen?
So I went to Liberty, right? So I did the whole ring before spring. So we got engaged before we graduated.
Emma she goes to Liberty.
Yeah.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah. So it was pretty interesting because
Does she stay in Fort Campbell while you're in Afghanistan?
no, she
or did
came
she
back.
come home?
She came home.
Okay.
Yeah. So we got engaged in December. I graduated in May. Got commissioned in May. We got married in May.
Okay.
Good Lord.
And is she a Yorktown girl? Or is she?
No, she's from Lynchburg.
She's Lynchburg.
So yeah, that's why
wow.
we came back after the active Army. So long story short, we said, hey, we can do 20 years. And then we were in a small group at church. And the small group was funny because it was just me and one other guy. And there's all a bunch of ladies. So of course, me and the other guys are talking. And he just retired from doing insurance. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. My family does insurance. My dad, my grandfather started it, kind of thing. And so he was talking to me, and so eventually, I think it was like a year left in my contract, and my dad called me. He's like, "Hey man, I don't know if you would ever be interested if you ever are thinking about getting out, but if you do, you can always come and join me." And I kind of laughed it off. And then I got into the small group, started talking to the guy, and I kind of told him, the situation. He's like, "If you don't strongly consider it, you're an idiot, because I know you know this, but the military does not value family. The military primary is, the top three things is Army, 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 and the fourth is family, like in regards to what's the most important." And so I was like, "Oh, okay."
It's difficult, yeah.
Took it to heart. And so that was the kind of, after weighing my options, I was like, and then I had some culminating events that really pushed me out of deciding not to do it. Just some bad interactions with toxic leadership. I was like, all right.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's that was the nail that finalized it for me. I was like, you know what? If I stay in here and I don't go a certain route and I stay in the big Army, then I might become that toxic leader that I don't want to be.
Interesting. Yeah.
So you went insurance coming out of the Army, but then you got in the National Guard.
Yeah.
Would you just miss being around the military, and so you re-enlisted, not re-enlisted, but re-signed up for the military?
So they have a program where you transition from the active to the Guard. And so I got into that path, and the justification primarily was kind of a soft transition. I was like, I'm still interested in serving, and I really am interested in health insurance. Mm-hmm. so I got set up and actually went to a unit in Portsmouth, which was it was a cavalry unit. So I was like, okay, it's a good, easy transition over to that organization. And so I stuck out with the Guard for another 5 years, and really good interaction.
Yeah.
Really surprised. It was funny, based on my dad's conversations about his Guard experience. He's like, "Yeah, man, we just go and hang out on drill weekends and try not to get in trouble." I'm like, "Oh, I can do that. That's fun." So go from those stories to then go into the actual current Guard, and it's like night and day. They're a well-organized, they get stuff done.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, surreal. I mean, basically, they're required. Their goal is to maintain the same standards as the big Army, with an 1/8 to the 16th of the time. Because they're only
You got 2 weeks summer, and then weekends.
Then a certain amount of, they call them mutas, of drill weekends a year. And so they're like, "Hey, why don't you do all this stuff with no time?"
So did you, any of that time frame, did you have any orders or anything to do anything other than your normal weekends and
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a negative thing, but I was being careful. So when I was in the active Army, I went from platoon leader to the executive officer.
Oh.
And so in my last year and a half of being at Fort Campbell, I was the executive officer for the same company, Charlie Company, that I was deployed with. But during that tenure, I was acting commander. The commander and a bunch of other key leaders within my company, and technically the battalion or squadron, got deployed. And they're doing like this unique, they kind of try to do like a special forces thing. They're like, "Hey, we're going to take all these key leaders and we're going to send them out to attach to a different, whether it be Afghan National Police or Army, and they'll be like a liaison. They'll teach, coach, mentor. But we're going to leave the executive officers and then all the soldiers behind." So I had like 90% of the company with no leaders other than me and a couple of E6s to run this. And anyways, long story short, so I had acting commander time, but technically not company commander time. I wasn't true like being rated as a company commander. So when I got into the Guard, then I moved from Portsmouth to Fredericksburg, and then when I was in Fredericksburg, I was a company commander up there for a engineer company. So that's, during the day-to-day, I was doing insurance, and then during the weekends, during drill and during the annual training, I was doing the Guard stuff. And then a couple of times before I took over the engineer company, I got picked up to be a company commander And it was one of those like, hey, congratulations, you're a company commander. Oh, by the way, they're going to deploy in a couple of months. And I was like, what? Like,
I can't.
yeah, I was like, it was one of those things where I was like, man, this is interesting because if I wasn't starting my own business, basically a sole proprietorship, and you guys were actually deploying somewhere cool, I would be all about it. But they were going to like cool Sinai Peninsula and Qatar. So it was like these really oddball mission sets that were basically just pulling security.
Yeah.
So I was like, nah, I'm not gonna do that. So I said thanks, but no thanks. And then I finally picked up a job up at Fredericksburg. Yeah. So it was interesting. It was one of those things where those are the gut
Who
checks.
activates the National Guard when there's? Didn't the National Guard get activated like tornadoes and stuff like that hit, or am I thinking something?
Yeah, the governor activates the guard.
Governor does.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you swear allegiance to the governor as well as the president. So you're technically the governor's the main, and then they'll Title 10 you and deploy you. So you'll have these guard units that go overseas. The first interaction I had with the guard unit in Afghanistan was a route clearance package, basically IED. So that was interesting. I was like, man, and they're actually pretty high speed.
Yeah.
So
Very cool.
So you interact with people you've been in? Do you still stay in touch with people?
not as much as I should, honestly. I have a couple of friends that I do reach out to, but not as many as I stay in touch with them, but not on the regular. It's kind of hard. Everyone, once they get out, they go do their own thing, and you can only have conversations about the same stories over and over again, kind of thing. So I never really kept up with as many as I would want. And most of the people I interact with currently, they're military by periphery, were guys that I went to college with, of course, that commissioned.
So you're Fredericksburg. How did you end up back?
So all the while, I was living in Lynchburg.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So when I was down in Portsmouth, I would drive down there.
Oh, okay.
And then same thing for Fredericksburg. And every time, it all would end up at Fort Pickett. So it was funny. I would go to Portsmouth and I'd drive by Pickett and know that in 6 hours I'd be driving back to go to Fort Pickett. But I had to go to the unit first.
And I got to meet your brother. He's a pretty strapped dude still, right?
Yeah.
I mean, both of y'all look like you could jump right back in the military right now. Oh, and what did he think of your service, and what did he end up going to? What is he at a different location than you are? And you're both serving at the same time, or what was that like family wise?
Yeah. So we were, I don't even know how many years. I guess it was like 2 or 3 years. Yeah. Okay. So long story short, he was a signal non-commissioned officer for the majority of his active service. So he was actually primarily stationed, I think, for 8 or 9 years in Germany, which was pretty cool to go visit him during that. But then when we were both in the military, he was at Fort Drum. I think he deployed the same time I did, but to Iraq.
Oh, okay.
So it was kind of interesting. But he was an NCO and he had a lot of years, so he was a first sergeant during that time.
Okay.
So it was very interesting. And then
He give you a bunch of shit for being an officer.
oh yeah, oh yeah. I mean, it was great. I mean, he taught me a lot. Especially this second lieutenant, you really don't earn your voice until you're at least a first lieutenant.
Yeah.
If you're doing it right.
Yeah.
So when you're a second lieutenant, you just shut up.
Yeah.
And you listen to your platoon sergeant, or you listen to any high ranking E6 there is, if E6, E7, E8, and then you just watch.
Yeah. It's the best way to survive.
Yeah.
For sure.
And so he was like, do that. So I was like, all right. And so I did it, and it worked out great. Built a lot of good relationships with NCOs because of it. So
Yeah. But your parents, your dad, they had to be worried. I mean, both of y'all are deployed across the globe. I mean,
Yeah.
one in Iraq and one in Afghanistan.
yeah, I mean, they obviously they're really supportive. I mean, we try to interact with them as much as we could, via email basically, but
Yeah.
they were just not trying to worry to death.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
How do you communicate with your wife while you're in Afghanistan?
Facebook.
Really?
Yeah.
No kidding.
That was the most immediate, other than email. But most of the time, we would time it and we would just chat.
Yeah. Really cool.
That was pretty funny. And I did have a phone. I got a civilian phone. So
One of the big antennas.
no, it was crazy. It was crazy. They had a network.
No kidding.
Yeah, you'd just go to the Haji stand and buy a cell phone and get a SIM card. And they had so they would, they control the towers, so they would turn them off at night.
Yeah.
But you can call on their network.
Wow.
Wow. Well, I appreciate you coming in. And
Yeah. It's really cool.
God, we
man.
learn a lot. I mean, I have no idea. Like I learned so much in these segments. So we appreciate you coming in. Before you go, we always ask our guests if you could pick anybody in history, whether they're still around or not. Who would you hang out with in a 24-hour period, and where would you hang out with them? You can pick anybody in history.
Oh my gosh.
We love putting people on the spot.
Well, honestly, it'd be kind of one of these either Patton or MacArthur kind of things
Wow. That's cool.
in the area of where they're most influential in that,
Yeah.
just because, you can read about them. It'd be interesting to actually see what they were like in real life. And you could imagine what they were thinking, but ultimately it'd be cool to just interact with them just because.
Like having a beer with Patton.
Oh, yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. No doubt. I mean, it'd be surreal. So one of those type things, obviously there's probably a better answer to that, but that would be kind of my knee-jerk answer.
Cool.
Well, again, thank you for spending some time with us, and thank you for your service again.
Yeah, thank you very much.